I need the key.
Hi, you must be Nancy. I'm so pleased you're here. I'm Jane. I know you've come to visit my stepmom, but I'd love it if you could pop by whenever you get the chance. Oh, we'll have such fun. Let's play a game.
Sure, Jane. What would you like to play?
Let's play this card game I found in your room. Actually, it's Bridget's room. I mean, it used to be her room. I mean, she died like 300 years ago. You can see a painting of her in the Great Hall. She's the one with the telescope. Okay, so you have to match up a pair of constellations. I made all the matches in 40 tries. Try to beat my record. You beat my score! Felicitations!
That was fun, but I'd like to ask you some questions.
Sure, what do you want to know? About Mummy? I mean, Linda. I do hope you'll help. She's been a bit out of sorts lately.
When did she start getting sick?
I was playing in Mummy's room when she wasn't there, and when I looked up, there was a lady, all dressed in black, putting something on Mummy's nightstand.
The woman left something?
The lady put a note on Mummy's nightstand, but I didn't read it. That's when Mummy started feeling poorly. I don't want to think about that. Let's play a game. It will cheer me up.
Not right now, but maybe later.
You can come in any time you want, even if I'm not here. I've got some really smashing things. I'm so happy you've come, Nancy. I hope you can make Mummy feel better. I totally love that show. Isn't Brady Armstrong so dreamy? Total hottie.
Looks like you're learning some interesting stuff.
Bet you wouldn't say that if you were the one who had to learn it.
You had a guinea pig?
Yes, but it died.
When?
I don't know. I'd really rather not think about it, all right? That's my family tree. Ask me anything about anyone. Go on, ask me.
Tell me about Randolph.
Randolph the Red, so named for his bright red hair, was considered a hero at the Battle of Poitiers. For his heroism, King Edward III awarded him with the lands in the region called Penvellyn. That's how we got our name.
Odo, that's an odd name.
Yeah, he isn't very exciting, really. Like farming and cows. His son Milo is much more interesting.
What about Milo?
Milo inherited not only his grandfather's red hair, but his military prowess. Milo was instrumental in the siege of Caen and was awarded even more lands by Henry V.
And Hugo?
He had a lot of kids, and his dates were 1401 to 1466.
Who was Josephus?
Yeah, they used a lot of Latin names back then and weird spellings. He became like a priest or parson or something.
Who was Robertus?
He was a knight, but died in some kind of jousting tournament. He was twins with Josephus.
Tell me about Lucia.
Isn't that a pretty name? If I have a daughter, I'll name her that.
Who was Adam?
Like he married Eve. Duh, no kidding. I actually don't know anything about him. I think he was the son of Hugo, though, but I forget.
Tell me about Albert.
He was very mysterious, and the people of Blackmoor were afraid of him because he knew all these scientific things. No one knows much about him, though.
Tell me about Edmund.
He was into cows. He did a lot of breeding of cows and sheep and got some kind of award from the king.
Who was Charles?
Charles was a famous judge and wrote very important books on law. But his boy, Garrett, drowned while he was really young.
Who was Gillian?
She married the Duke of Ballingsford, but she stayed at Blackmoor to raise her son Thomas, who inherited the estate when his grandfather Charles died.
Tell me about Thomas.
He was Charles's grandson and wrote a lot of poetry. He also had 3 wives, Catherine, Anne, and Mary, but not like at the same time. They died and he just remarried.
What did Francis do?
He got into a big fight with his brother James and lived in France.
Who was Elizabeth?
Like the Queen of England? Oh, you mean Elizabeth, my ancestor. It's weird that she's the only ancestor named Elizabeth, since it's such a popular name.
Can you tell me about George, the one born in 1566?
He lived and died. End of story.
Tell me about Geoffrey.
I'd rather not. I'm kind of bored. Wouldn't you rather play a game?
Who's James?
He never married, but one day, when he was very old, a baby was found at the doorstep to the manor. He took her in and raised her as his own. That was Eleanor.
What can you tell me about Eleanor?
Just that she was burned as a witch, but it wasn't true, and her father, James, died when he saw her die, and then the family fled to France. I don't want to talk about this.
Who was Virginie?
She was married to the Duke of Barrowbold and died in the Great Fire of London.
Tell me about Francois.
He was a dwarf and became a trusted confidant to Louis XIV. Little people often held positions of great esteem at that time.
Who was Edward?
He lived in France with his father, Le Comte de Roquefort. He was very interested in languages and translated books from Greek and Latin.
Tell me about Corbin.
I don't know. He doesn't have a coat of arms in the Great Hall because he didn't live here. Wasn't even a British subject, that's all I know.
And Philippe?
He made a fortune in the New World and bought back most of the lands that were confiscated by Cromwell.
Who's Penelope?
I don't know much about her except that she was very loved by practically everyone in England, and there were 1 million poems written about her. If I have a boyfriend, I'd never let him write a poem about me. Blech.
Tell me about Martha.
She was completely daft. She'd wear really bizarre outfits, and she was one of the first women to ride on a steam train.
Tell me about Brigitte, the one born in 1759.
She never married and was bonkers for astronomy. She adopted her sister's son, Richard, who later got killed at Waterloo.
Tell me about Richard.
He died in Waterloo fighting against Napoleon.
Tell me about Edward, the one from the 19th century.
He was a big explorer and went all over the world. He wasn't very close with his son, who was also an explorer. They'd only see each other by chance in weird remote places like Samarkand and Walla Walla.
Who was Caroline?
Caroline was a chemist and helped identify the element lanthanum. I'm not sure what the element does. I think it's a heavy metal.
Who was the William who died so young?
He was Edward's little brother. He named his son after him.
Who was William?
He was an explorer just like his father. He was kind of a whiner, so I heard.
Who was John, the one who was born in 1873?
He was this huge naturalist and did a lot of exploration in the Amazon. I think there's a plant named after him. Or maybe a monkey, I forget.
Tell me about Obadiah.
He lived in the US for most of his life and married this weird woman named Eustacia. She's still alive and sometimes calls us. She's totally creepy.
Who was Rachel?
She died in France during the war. I guess she worked for the French resistance.
Who was Esther?
Esther Penvellyn Romberg, born in 1897 and died in 1951. Her friends called her Polly.
What did Nahum do?
He died in the flu epidemic.
Who was Malachi?
He was a doctor of medicine and did a lot of research on icky skin diseases. Happily, I'm blessed with perfect skin.
What do you know about Letitia?
Loves plants, hates noise. You can ask her about it. She's usually in the conservatory with her plants.
Who was Alan?
He was my grandfather, but I didn't know him because he died when I was little. I guess he was nice. Nigel gave that to me when I was in the library once. I think he was hoping it would scare me, but it didn't. I'm too smart to believe in that sort of stuff.
phone number just might come in handy. What is this book?
Don't know, really. Ethel gave it to me. She said it belonged to my grandfather. Do you think Brady Armstrong is cute?
Each of those cups seems to be associated with a Roman numeral. Who's this?
That's my mum, my real mum. She's an opera singer. It's not like she's famous or anything, but she does live in Paris. That was written by Charles Penvellyn way back in like the 1500s. When I read it, it seemed really familiar, you know?
As the moon rises upon thee, fear not, but draw upon the strength of absent friends and toast to their memories and happiness and wonder. With the stalwart heart of a knight, let charity be thy guiding angel. Stay firm in knowledge as a dedicated geometer, and fear not the ravages of Father Time. For, dear child, as you learn the lessons of folly, the secrets of this world shall dawn in thy soul.
Oh, you startled me. You must be Nancy. I'm Jane's tutor, Ethel.
How do you do?
Jane is very excited you're visiting. You're all she's talked about for the past week.
I saw Jane's lesson schedule. That's quite an unusual list of subjects.
Yes, well, I'm sorry, but I'm in a bit of a rush. I need to go over some things with Jane.
Oh, I guess I'll be going then.
It was a pleasure meeting you, Nancy. Our paths will cross again, I'm sure.
There goes my cell phone. Hello?
Hi, Nancy. It's Mrs. Petrov. How is everything? Have you seen Linda yet?
Yes, and I'm afraid she seemed really depressed.
I'm just about at my wit's end. I've never known her to act like this. The last doctor that examined her said that aside from a little dry skin, which is not unusual for her, she was perfectly fine.
Maybe she's just unhappy here.
I don't know why. I mean, she absolutely adores Hugh. She was thrilled when they got married and couldn't wait to start a new life with him and his daughter there in England. Something has changed her. Something in that house. Hugh is just as bewildered and upset by her behavior as I am. Please get to the bottom of this, Nancy. You're our last hope.
Where is Hugh?
He was called to Rome. As a diplomat, he's always being called out of the country without warning and without any say in the matter. He'd much rather be there with Linda, although...
Mrs. Petrov? Are you there?
It's just that Hugh said it hasn't been very easy for him to talk to her lately. Whenever he calls, which is at least once a day, Linda always seems to fly off the handle for no reason, which doesn't make sense. Linda has always been extremely level-headed and even-tempered. She never gets angry. At least she didn't used to.
Who exactly is Mrs. Drake?
She's Hugh's aunt. She's taken care of Blackmoor Manor ever since her brother died. He was Hugh's father. She's a bit of a character.
I noticed.
The way she spends all her time in that conservatory, slouching around, trowel in hand, murmuring to herself. You'd think she was burying something. Or somebody.
Goodbye, Mrs. Petrov.
Goodbye, Nancy. Oh, one more thing. My niece is on call and her husband's out of town, and I told her I'd go over there and babysit if she had to work. So if you call and I don't answer, that's why. Bye.
This is Paliki.
Hi, my name is Nancy Drew. Could I ask you some questions about lycanthropy?
I'm sorry, I'm about to leave for a seminar and I'm very busy. Besides, I've written 2 books and 12 articles on the subject. If you have questions, perhaps you should try reading one of them.
I did. That's how I got your number.
Well, if you didn't understand something, I'm afraid I really don't have time to explain it to you.
I understood everything. It's just that I know someone who seems to be exhibiting some of the symptoms of lycanthropic
Lycanthropic metamorphosis? Well, that's different. Talk to me.
What do you consider to be the definitive signs that someone is turning into some kind of animal?
Symptoms are relatively subtle. Dry mouth, fatigue, impaired vision, and reduced blood flow to the skin. Is this person pale?
Maybe.
Maybe. Is this person pale or not?
I don't know. She won't let anyone see her. She just lies in bed all day behind this curtain.
And at night, what does she do at night?
I can't be sure, but I do know that I saw something outside the night I arrived. Some kind of animal. And when I asked to see my friend, I was told she was unavailable.
This sounds very promising.
You don't really believe she's turning into some kind of creature, do you?
Young lady, I believe the human mind is capable of far more than we can ever imagine. Pale skin, dry mouth, fatigue. The human mind is perfectly capable of causing the body to exhibit such symptoms, if it is so motivated.
What would motivate someone to turn into an animal?
Most lycanthropes are under a great deal of stress, due perhaps to the death of a loved one, marriage, divorce, a relocation, that sort of thing. They're emotionally vulnerable, which means they're particularly open to the power of suggestion.
Someone suggests they become a lycanthrope?
Not in so many words, of course. Somehow they get it in their head that they're destined to take another form. They see something, they read something, someone says something to them. Somehow they come to believe they're supposed to undergo a physical metamorphosis, and so, in their weakened psychological state, they do.
Are temper tantrums symptomatic of lycanthropy?
There are no hard and fast rules when it comes to lycanthropy, or almost anything else for that matter. But if someone believes that what they're changing into is irrational, or has a bad temper, then they will exhibit irrational, ill-tempered behavior, especially if this is contrary to their former nature.
Thanks for your time.
Good day.
Hugh Penvellyn here.
Hello, Mr. Penvellyn. This is Nancy Drew. I'm the one who's visiting Linda. You know, from the United States, across the pond.
Yes, of course. Are you at Blackmoor?
Yes, I am, and I've talked to Linda.
Good for you, because frankly, that's something I've been quite unable to do lately. These temper tantrums of hers make rational discourse well nigh impossible.
She gets angry for no reason?
Absolutely none. We'll be talking on the phone about the weather or Jane's lessons or something equally innocuous, and suddenly she'll be bellowing at me and slamming the phone down.
Are you sure you didn't inadvertently say something, argumentative?
I promise you, these rages of hers are totally uncalled for and quite unbearable. I love her dearly, but she's making things very difficult.
I understand that Mrs. Drake is your aunt?
Yes, Aunt Letitia. We're not very close, however. She's always been rather aloof, much more interested in being a Penvellyn than a person, if you know what I mean.
Does Linda get along with her?
As far as I know, yes, although I have caught my aunt eyeing Linda strangely at times. And of course there's the 6-month habitation clause.
The what?
According to the Penvellyn rules of inheritance, the spouse of Blackmoor Manor's current owner, that would be Linda since I'm the current owner, the spouse of the current owner must reside in the manor for at least 6 months. Should she or he leave the manor before 6 months is up, ownership of 1/2 of the estate immediately passes to the next legal heir.
And that would be Mrs. Drake.
Correct.
I met your daughter Jane.
Quite the bundle of energy, isn't she?
I get the feeling that she's a little lonely.
I'm sure she is, what with a private tutor instead of school and Linda being under the weather. And coming back to Blackmoor no doubt reminds her of her real mother. Renee and I were divorced almost 2 years ago. Jane went into a bit of a tailspin for a while, but she's come to adore Linda. She's been calling her mummy since the day we were married.
Have you spent much time on your father's computer, the one that's in the library?
I dare say I've never touched it. Mathematics, computer science, linguistics, all the things that fascinated my scholarly father bored me to tears. He gave up on me quite early on. With Jane, however, it was a different story.
What do you mean?
From the day she was born, my father doted on her, far more than he ever doted on me. Read to her, bought her books, games. Truth be told, I was a bit jealous. He passed away when she was still a toddler, so it's unlikely she remembers all the attention he showered on her. But I do, and I still find it so out of character as to be mystifying.
It was nice talking to you.
This is an extremely busy time for me, so I apologize in advance if you call and I'm unavailable.
I understand.
Good. Cheerio.